So, what's W3C?
What is
and why do we need to be there? Or why do we care at all?
W3C is the organization that makes the basic standards for the web. So HTML, CSS, SVG, lots of APIs, lots of functionalities. The things that are going to work in a web browser or on a website, most of them are defined at W3C. And it's an organization which people join, or organizations join. It's a consortium. The members basically decide what happens. So Yandex, as a leader in Russia, but globally as a significant player on the internet, should and will have an influence in how the web is developed. As we create new services, as we look at new ways of developing our services, some of those things, some of them are just innovations in Yandex, but some of them are ways that we want the web to develop. So we need to share them, we need to make them a standard. And other companies that have been doing this for a while will come up with ideas and make the technology that we have to use. So we want to make the technology that we have to use do the things we like and need.
What are the most important things that we should do at
the most important things that we should do? Well, everything. There are some obvious priorities. So we are already, I am the chair of the Web Applications Group, which makes a lot of APIs for like XML HTTP request. I mean, that's been around for 10 years, but it's never been standardized. There's never been a proper specification which people actually understand and all implement. That is nearly finished in that group. Simple things, element traversal, or query selector. These are small specifications that make it easier to develop sites. Web IDL, which is a very large specification. And then various types of events, various types of APIs. So those things matter to us. HTML5 and HTML 5.1 is the plan for W3C now. The next version will be called HTML 5.1. We care about what goes into that and what doesn't. We may or may not need to be involved in any particular discussion. If people are doing stuff, we look at it, we say, this is great, keep right on, no problem. There will be other cases where we look at it and we say, no, it is important that something happens this way and not that way. So maybe CSS, SVG.
How do you do some things at W3C? How
does it work?
Yeah.
Right.
How
so
does it look like?
The basic process.
I don't know.
A W3C member says, we would like, to pick an example, geolocation. And we can go through the example. But people said, we want to be able to have geolocation. A couple of browsers, a couple of telephone companies were interested. People had worked with this already, so they had ideas. They create a working group, which is basically a mailing list, a chair, someone to coordinate it. And then W3C members who are interested in this technology start arguing about exactly what it should be like. You write a specification, you put it out, it's a draft. Everybody says, no, you can't have this, you should change that. So it gets shaken around and changed. When the working group thinks it's ready, then it actually goes to the rest of the world. Most of the work is available to the public, but in W3C, for every specification, there's a stage where they explicitly say, right, this is the last chance for the public to comment, and every comment will be answered. So it's quite a big job. It's a big
process.
Commitment.
Yeah.
It depends. If you do a very good job of the specification, it's a very short process, right?
Okay.
There are no comments. If it's very controversial, or if it's very big, like HTML5, it might take a couple of years. So you do that. You then have to prove that you can implement the specification. So ideally, as you've been developing it, people have been implementing. And some specifications, they get to that stage, they're already done. They're already implemented in 5 browsers before they try and test. Other specifications, there are no real implementations. People have done coding and prototyped, so you actually have to show the thing works. And then you're done. You declare victory, have a party, and start work on version X.1 or X plus 1.
Okay, so is there some point at who decides when there's a point when we no longer take any comments from the public, or when we decide that this is a standard?
So basically the working groups make decisions about their specifications. So the working group is set up and given responsibility to look after what they do. How do decisions get taken? Well, it depends. Sometimes there's pressure to get a spec out very fast, and the working group will say, look, we're going to do a very simple version 1, we're going to do a version 2 afterwards. Sometimes people say we're going to do one version and it will never change, so we will just keep fixing it until it's perfect. That never works, but people keep trying it. The working group decides when it thinks it's finished, then to go through the final stages. W3C's structure is very, very democratic in theory. And actually, it's very democratic in practice. In theory, Tim Berners-Lee, who's the director, makes all the decisions.
Okay.
You must convince Tim about everything. But the practical implication, the way it really works is, the working group turns up to a meeting, or the chair and the staff contact. They bring their document, they bring their email list, they say, here are all the comments we got from the public, we answered them all here. Maybe the normal way W3C works is consensus. Everybody has to be happy. If people object, a single person objecting, if they're really pushing the objection, Tim will look at that particular objection and say, you know what, this guy is talking crazy talk, and the whole working group, which is 17 software companies, 22 content producers, and 3 guys, all think it's crazy and they've all implemented it the other way. Or he will say, you know what, this guy's actually talking sense, and yes, you could do it both ways, but as an example, objections about accessibility. So if you do this, if you make choice A instead of choice B, it will be really hard to build an accessible version of the content. And Tim might look at that and say, yeah, you could choose either way technically, but making a web that cuts out some proportion of the population because of a disability or because it doesn't meet internationalization, that's stupid. Those kind of objections he will generally pick up and say, go back and fix it.
And how often does Tim actually have to do something like that? All the time, or is it very rare cases of something?
It's very rare that an objection comes all the way through the life of a spec. It tends to happen on very big, things like HTML, very basic, fundamental specifications. So, and most of them, people say, I will object. So the working group sits down. If they think the objection is reasonable or substantial, usually the working group will try and resolve this before it gets to Tim.
Okay. And who are the members of W3C? Is it mostly, I don't know, commercial companies or?
So in Russia, W3C has now 3 classes of members. So there are startup members. In Russia, there are no startup members. Startup is very new. There are a handful around the world. There's associate members, which is either small companies or research, non-profit organizations. So there's a couple of those as a university. And then large companies like Yandeks are full members. The difference is just in how much money you pay. The bigger you are, the more membership you're supposed to pay. We're the only full member from Russia, and we've only just become a member. There are about just under 400 members around the world. So most of them, I guess, are technology companies. There are quite a lot of universities and research organizations. There are a lot of small companies.
What's their reason to be a W3C member?
Because they care about the technology. I mean,
they just care, or they have something
well,
that
it matters to them,
yeah.
right? they care enough that if it gets broken, they'll have a problem.
Okay.
This is why they care. So they join to have the ability to influence the process, to have input, also to learn what's happening, what other companies are doing. But big technology companies, most big technology companies are members of W3C. And then there are strange things. Opera is one of the smallest companies that makes a web browser. It makes less money than the Mozilla company.
Which is not non-profitable.
Well, yeah.
Like yeah.
So Opera is one of the biggest participants in W3C. And only recently...
Biggest participant in which...
the most people doing work in all kinds of places. At the same kind of level as Microsoft or IBM. They play like very big players. But you have blindness organizations, Fundación Once in Spain, or the RNIB, the Royal National Institute of the Blind in the UK. Those are members, and precisely for the case of they want the web to work for blind people, because that's the people they look after, the people they work with. And so they have an interest. A company like Boeing, they make aeroplanes, but they have 250,000 employees or something. All of those employees are working with web technology. They use a lot of web technology in their everyday operation. So there are things that they actually want to have working. They're big fans of SVG, right?
Yeah.
And they're big enough that they care. So.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.